Hello, 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 hello. How's everybody doing today? Um, I'm going to jump on into this topic. I have been holding myself, but it is definitely a topic that I definitely want to jump into. So, y'all know me. Uh, we're going to watch a video and then I'm going to come back and give my point of view. But first, I wanted to go over some things with you. When you say you're okay, but really you're not okay, oftentimes we all have done that because we are all human. So let's make that aware that it's okay to, I mean, we all do it. We say we're okay, but really we're not okay. When is it time to speak out and let somebody know that it's okay that you're not okay? Oftentimes, we don't check on our families or friends like we need to. And they could be suffering in silence. But because they say they're okay, you just assume that they're really okay. And that may not be true. So, this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I think we got one more day in the month. I wanted to cover it now before the month ends. October is the Domestic Violence Awareness. So, this is what we're going to do. We're going to bring awareness to everybody, not only for domestic violence, but for any type of situation that we find ourselves in. And we're saying we're okay, but really we're not. It's okay to let somebody know that I'm not okay, that I'm hurting, because we are human. And it's okay to say I'm hurting inside. Okay, but now we're going to, since it is domestic violence, I have a clip that I wanted everybody to hear, and then I'm going to come back and go over some things because it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we need to bring awareness definitely to domestic violence, but also awareness to other people that are just not doing well. So we're going to talk about it all today. It doesn't necessarily, it may not be domestic violence. It may be they've lost a loved one and they're hurting. Um, they've lost a job. They've been betrayed and they're hurting in silence. And they're saying, I'm okay, but really they're not okay. So let's have the conversation. Let's listen at this and then we'll come back and talk about some things.
I'm here today to talk about a disturbing question, which has an equally disturbing answer. My topic is the secrets of domestic violence. And the question I'm going to tackle is the one question everyone always asks. Why does she stay? Why would anyone stay with a man who beats her? I'm not a psychiatrist, a social worker, or an expert in domestic violence. I'm just one woman with a story to tell. I was 22. I had just graduated from Harvard College. I'd moved to New York City for my first job as a writer and editor at 17 magazine. I had my first apartment, my first little green American Express card, and I had a very big secret. My secret was that I had this gun loaded with hollow point bullets pointed at my head by the man who I thought was my soulmate many, many times. The man who I loved more than anybody on earth held a gun to my head, and threatened to kill me more times than I can even remember. I'm here to tell you the story of crazy love, a psychological trap disguised as love, one that millions of women and even a few men fall into every year. It may even be your story. I don't look like a typical domestic violence survivor. I have a BA in English from Harvard College, an MBA in marketing from Wharton Business School. I spent most of my career working for Fortune 500 companies, including Johnson & Johnson, Leo Burnett, and the Washington Post. I've been married for almost 20 years to my second husband, and we have 3 kids together. My dog is a black lab, and I drive a Honda Odyssey minivan. So my first message for you is that domestic violence happens to everyone. All races, all religions, all income and education levels. It's everywhere. And my second message is that everyone thinks domestic violence happens to women, that it's a women's issue. Not exactly. Over 85% of abusers are men. And domestic abuse happens only in intimate, interdependent, long-term relationships. In other words, in families. The last place we would want or expect to find violence, which is one reason domestic abuse is so confusing. I would have told you myself that I was the last person on earth who would stay with a man who beats me. But in fact, I was a very typical victim because of my age. I was 22. And in the United States, women ages 16 to 24 are 3 times as likely to be domestic violence victims as women of other ages. And over 500 women and girls this age are killed every year by abusive partners, boyfriends and husbands in the United States. I was also a very typical victim because I knew nothing about domestic violence, its warning signs or its patterns. I met Connor on a cold, rainy January night. He sat next to me on the New York City subway, and he started chatting me up. He told me 2 things. One was that he too had just graduated from an Ivy League school, and that he worked at a very impressive Wall Street bank. But what made the biggest impression on me that first meeting was that he was smart and funny, and he looked like a farm boy. He had these big cheeks, these big apple cheeks, and this wheat blonde hair, and he seemed so sweet. One of the smartest things Connor did from the very beginning was to create the illusion that I was the dominant partner in the relationship. He did this, especially at the beginning, by idolizing me. We started dating, and he loved everything about me. That I was smart, that I'd gone to Harvard, that I was passionate about helping teenage girls and my job. He wanted to know everything about my family and my childhood, my hopes and dreams. Connor believed in me as a writer and a woman in a way that no one else ever had. And he also created a magical atmosphere of trust between us by confessing his secret, which was that as a very young boy, starting at age 4, he had been savagely and repeatedly physically abused by his stepfather. And the abuse had gotten so bad that he had had to drop out of school in 8th grade, even though he was very smart. And he'd spent almost 20 years rebuilding his life, which is why that Ivy League degree and the Wall Street job and his bright, shiny future meant so much to him. If you had told me that this smart, funny, sensitive man who adored me would one day dictate whether or not I wore makeup, how short my skirts were, where I lived, what jobs I took, who my friends were, and where I spent Christmas, I would have laughed at you. Because there was not a hint of violence or control or anger in Connor at the beginning. I didn't know that the first stage in any domestic violence relationship is to seduce and charm the victim. I also didn't know that the second step is to isolate the victim. Now, Connor did not come home one day and announce, hey, all this Romeo and Juliet stuff has been great, but I need to move into the next phase where I isolate you and I abuse you. So I need to get you out of this apartment where the neighbors can hear you scream and out of this city where you have friends and family and coworkers who can see the bruises. Instead, Connor came home one Friday evening, and he told me that he had quit his job that day, his dream job. And he said that he had quit his job because of me. Because I had made him feel so safe and loved that he didn't need to prove himself on Wall Street anymore. And he just wanted to get out of the city and away from his abusive, dysfunctional family and move to a tiny town in New England where he could start his life over with me by his side. Now, the last thing I wanted to do was leave New York and my dream job. But I thought you made sacrifices for your soulmate. So I agreed, and I quit my job, and Connor and I left Manhattan together. I had no idea I was falling into crazy love, that I was walking headfirst into a carefully laid physical, financial, and psychological trap. The next step in the domestic violence pattern is to introduce the threat of violence and see how she reacts. And here's where those guns come in. As soon as we moved to New England, you know that place where Connor was supposed to feel so safe? He bought 3 guns. He kept one in the glove compartment of our car. He kept one under the pillows on our bed. And the third one he kept in his pocket at all times. And he said that he needed those guns because of the trauma he'd experienced as a young boy. He needed them to feel protected. But those guns were really a message for me. And even though he hadn't raised a hand to me, my life was already in grave danger every minute of every day. Connor first physically attacked me 5 days before our wedding. It was 7 a.m. I still had on my nightgown. I was working on my computer trying to finish a freelance writing assignment, and I got frustrated. And Connor used my anger as an excuse to put both of his hands around my neck and to squeeze so tightly that I could not breathe or scream. And he used the chokehold to hit my head repeatedly against the wall. 5 days later, the 10 bruises on my neck had just faded, and I put on my mother's wedding dress, and I married him. Despite what had happened, I was sure we were going to live happily ever after because I loved him and he loved me so much. And he was very, very sorry. He had just been really stressed out by the wedding and by becoming a family with me. It was an isolated incident and he was never going to hurt me again. It happened twice more on the honeymoon. The first time, I was driving to find a secret beach, and I got lost. And he punched me in the side of my head so hard that the other side of my head repeatedly hit the driver's side window. And then a few days later, driving home from our honeymoon, he got frustrated by traffic, and he threw a cold Big Mac in my face. Connor proceeded to beat me once or twice a week for the next 2.5 years of our marriage. I was mistaken in thinking that I was unique and alone in this situation. 1 in 3 American women experiences domestic violence or stalking at some point in her life. And the CDC reports that 15 million children are abused every year. 15 million. So actually, I was in very good company. Back to my question. Why did I stay? The answer is easy. I didn't know he was abusing me. Even though he held those loaded guns to my head, pushed me downstairs, threatened to kill our dog, pulled the key out of the car ignition as I drove down the highway, poured coffee grinds on my head as I dressed for a job interview. I never once thought of myself as a battered wife. Instead, I was a very strong woman in love with a deeply troubled man, and I was the only person on earth who could help Connor face his demons. The other question everybody asks is, why doesn't she just leave? Why didn't I walk out? I could have left any time. To me, this is the saddest and most painful question that people ask, because we victims know something you usually don't. It's incredibly dangerous to leave an abuser, because the final step in the domestic violence pattern is kill her. Over 70% of domestic violence murders happen after the victim has ended the relationship, after she's gotten out, because then the abuser has nothing left to lose. Other outcomes include long-term stalking, even after the abuser remarries, denial of financial resources, and manipulation of the family court system to terrify the victim and her children, who are regularly forced by family court judges to spend unsupervised time with the man who beat their mother. And still we ask, why doesn't she just leave? I was able to leave because of one final sadistic beating that broke through my denial. I realized that the man who I loved so much was going to kill me if I let him. So I broke the silence. I told everyone. The police, my neighbors, my friends and family, total strangers. And I'm here today because you all helped me. We tend to stereotype victims as grisly headlines, self-destructive women, damaged goods. The question, why does she stay, is code for some people for it's her fault for staying. As if victims intentionally choose to fall in love with men intent upon destroying us. But since publishing Crazy Love, I have heard hundreds of stories from men and women who also got out, who learned an invaluable life lesson from what happened, and who rebuilt lives, joyous, happy lives, as employees, wives, and mothers, lives completely free of violence. Like me, because it turns out that I'm actually a very typical domestic violence victim and a typical domestic violence survivor. I remarried a kind and gentle man. We have those 3 kids. I have that black lab, and I have that minivan. What I will never have again, ever, is a loaded gun held to my head by someone who says that he loves me. Now, right now, maybe you're thinking, wow, this is fascinating. Or, wow, how stupid was she? But this whole time, I've actually been talking about you. I promise you, there are several people listening to me right now who are currently being abused, or who were abused as children, or who are abusers themselves. Abuse could be affecting your daughter, your sister, your best friend right now. I was able to end my own crazy love story by breaking the silence. I'm still breaking the silence today. It's my way of helping other victims. And it's my final request of you. Talk about what you heard here. Abuse thrives only in silence. You have the power to end domestic violence simply by shining a spotlight on it. We victims need everyone. We need every one of you to understand the secrets of domestic violence. Show abuse the light of day by talking about it with your children, your coworkers, your friends and family. Recast survivors as wonderful, lovable people with full futures. Recognize the early signs of violence and conscientiously intervene, de-escalate it, show victims a safe way out. Together, we can make our beds, our dinner tables, and our families the safe and peaceful oases they should be. Thank you.
Okay. Wow. Oftentimes, people feel that people want to be in that type of relationship, and some people not even aware that they are in a real domestic violence situation. They think it's love. they think it's a misunderstanding, but they're not even aware. So that's what we're doing today, is bringing awareness. When you say you're okay, but really you're not, because you don't want nobody to know what's really going on in your household, I will say, tell somebody it's okay. It's okay to have a conversation with your friends, your family, if you need to call the police. Whatever you need to do, tell somebody, and don't keep suffering in silence. Because there is a way out, and you are not alone. And it's definitely not your fault. It's the abuser's fault. Most abusers have been abused somewhere. That's just like the bully syndrome I've been talking about. And they were victims at one point, and now the victim become the bully. That's sort of like in domestic violence. They become a bully. You want to bully somebody. You want to control somebody. It's about control. But I say control yourself. If you feel like you are in that type of situation, get out. Find a way out. Find a way to get some help. You don't have to keep suffering in silence. And it's okay, because you are not alone. So what I'm going to do today is go over some warning signs. Let's talk about some statistics. 85% of domestic violence victims are women. And most of the abusers are people they're in a relationship with. Most people that are in relationships, high school relationships, it's just not for adults. It's a community issue. It's not a Black issue. It's not a white issue. It's not a Hispanic issue. It's a community issue as a whole. It doesn't care what your nationality is. It doesn't care what your color is. It doesn't care if you are a man. It doesn't care if you are a woman. It doesn't care if you're a teenager, if you're a girl or a boy. It doesn't care. Abuse is abuse. Everybody is subject to being abused if you meet the wrong person. And you don't know that they're the wrong person, because when you first meet somebody, I say they put on a whole another face. They representative face, and you meet people and they pretend to be this nice, kind person. And then later on, as you get to know them, you find out they ain't all that nice. But you're stuck. Either you got a child with them, or you feel like I'm living with them, there's no way out. It's always a way out. Maybe it's a lifestyle you don't want to give up, but is it worth your life? Domestic violence, a lot of times happen behind closed doors. And oftentimes people aren't aware. And some people are aware. What are you saying to your friend or your family member? Because we have got to try and bring more awareness to this and let people know it's not their fault and they can get out and get help. Too many victims are left without any help they desperately need, because many states don't even have funding or resources to help these people. Reason I say people, because it could be a man, it could be a woman. Women abuse men just as almost as much as men abuse women. You got women out here, you know, they be fighting these men too. certain states don't view domestic violence as serious, and it's very serious. Every day, there are almost 20 people a minute that are physically abused by someone close to them. I'm going to say that again. Every day, there are 20 people a minute that are physically abused by someone close to them. And that averages out to about 10 million women and men a year that are victims of domestic violence. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men face some type of domestic violence with an intimate partner that result in some type of injury, stress disorder. Some may contract sexual transmitted diseases. Many other devastating results can result with these type of statistics. On an average day, 20,000 phone calls are made to domestic violence hotline across the nation. And 15% of them are intimate partners. Let's look at the death rate. Out of 29 deaths last year, 52% were due to gunshot wounds. Domestic violence and gun violence. Guns in the home. The risk of homicide increased by 500% where domestic violence is taking place. That's 1 in 7 women. That's 1 in 18 men at some point in their lives will feel threatened. They will feel in fear of their life. They will feel somebody's going to harm them. They've been stalked. They feel like an intimate partner is going to kill them. 34% of victims ever receive medical treatment. So a lot of people don't even go and get help. They deal with it in silence and they heal in silence. And a lot of times you don't even know it, that they've even been in a physical altercation with someone or their intimate partner. But it's saying that's a lot when I look at in the United States, 10 million people experience domestic violence every year. That's a lot of people in the United States. 10 million? That means it could be your mother. It could be your sister. It could be your brother. It could be your child. It could be your parent, your grandparents, your friends, your associates. When I see 10 million, it could be the person next to you in the grocery store. Wow, that's mind-blowing. And just think 34% don't even go and get treatment. They suffer in silence. Some places are worse than others. 1.3 million women and 835,000 men are physically assaulted by an intimate partner in the United States every year. Which leads to emotional or financial manipulation. Many social workers get involved and see that, I guess, especially if women are getting some type of help or they are reaching out. And one thing we all need to be mindful of is that a lot of times abuse may not even leave a physical mark, and a person could be abused and you don't even know that they're being abused because you don't see any scars, but they could still be getting abused. Let's talk about some of the warning signs that you need to be mindful of. This is from Carol Ann Peterson. She's she's a adjunct professor at USC Suzanne Derwick Perk School. She's a social worker. And she had identified some of the red flags that we need to be aware of when it comes to abuse. Warning signs: isolation. A lot of times the abuser tries to get you isolated from family and friends, and he just wants you to be with him. And that's typically how it starts out, and you think it's cute because he just wants to spend time with you alone. And then it starts getting more serious down the line. That's an early warning sign. If you're with someone and you have to ask permission before making plans to go out with your friends. It's one thing to say, I'm going out with my friends, but I got to ask you, can I go? That's a warning sign. You're in an abusive relationship. If you feel like you got to tiptoe around this person because you're afraid of how they may react or how they feel, you might be in an abusive relationship. Financial control, because a lot of times people don't know. So let's bring awareness up. Let's talk about some of these issues. And if you're in that type of relationship, that may want to be a red flag to pop up and say, oh, okay, so if he's trying to control me or if he's trying to isolate me from my family and friends, is he going to be abusive down the line? Do I have to ask this man for permission to go see my family? No. You might be abusive down the line. Maybe we think it's cute in the beginning, but you're a grown person. You're a grown woman. You're a grown man. Why I gotta ask permission to go and hang with my family member or go hang out with a friend? I ought to be able to say, look, this is what I'm gonna do. I'll be back. But if I got to ask you, can I go? As if you are my dad or you're my parent. That's a warning sign to tell you that this person is trying to isolate you and they're trying to be control over you. They're taking control over you and they're doing it in a slow pace. So recognize the warning signs. Financial control. A lot of times they want to pay all the bills. And I guess I don't want to say that because a lot of households, some people are better at paying bills than others. But when they're taking your paychecks from week to week and announcing you out your money, I don't know. I think we all need to put our money and split it towards the bills. I'm going to give you XYZ towards this bill or XYZ towards that bill. But when you're taking my whole check and saying you're going to allowance it out to me, but I don't went out here and work for it, I don't know. I got to look at that a little different. Is that financial control? Yes, it is. Some women are even forced to quit their jobs or drop out of school because your partner don't want you in school. He doesn't want you working. He doesn't want you educating yourself. You're in an abusive relationship. That's a warning sign. Unexpected injuries. Another warning sign. If you are being bruised, if somebody is hitting you, you got cuts, scrapes, broken bones, and you are trying to explain it away and you just covering for this person, and once they hit you one time, 9 times out of 10 they're gonna hit you again. That's a warning sign. This person is abusive. They can tell you 1,000 times, I'm not gonna hit you no more. And they won't for the first week. But what are you gonna do when you get to week 2 and 3 and 4, and then they decide to hit you again? What are you gonna do? When do you break free? Because if they hit you one time, they're gonna hit you again. And we have to be mindful of this, especially when you got children. Not only girls, but boys too, because women are violent just like men are violent. These are conversations that need to be had in the family, especially with children in high school. Even with adults, we are having these conversations because people are suffering in silence. Your children are watching you. Domestic violence can lead to anxiety, depression, PTSD, mental health issues. Most people end up suffering with some type of mental health issue if you stay in it long enough, but you can get help. Sometimes abusers even make you feel that you're unworthy and try and lower your self-esteem. That's a sign. They may tell you you're not beautiful, but you are beautiful. Don't let anybody tell you that you're not. They want to manipulate you. Try to lower your self-esteem, but don't let anybody rob you of your self-esteem. You always hold your head up high. Maybe your partner is using substance abuse. That's another warning sign. They're drinking, they're doing too many drugs. Alcohol can lead to violence. Drugs lead to violence. Those are symptoms. A lot of people can't control themselves after drinking or drugging, and they tend to want to lash out at their partners. That's a warning sign that you are in a domestic violence situation. Understand the warning signs and then say, I got to get out of this. This is not normal behavior. Self-harm, suicidal thoughts. Some even people attempt suicide to get away from a partner, especially if they feel like there's no way out. But I want you to know today there is a way out. Start telling people. It's okay to tell somebody. It's okay. And you are not alone. And I think it starts with awareness of understanding there is help out here. There are hotlines you can call. There are places you can go that people will help you escape the abuse that you are in. Some, maybe you don't want to start over, but what if you don't start over and this person take your life? Think about your children. Think about yourself, your own safety. When does it come a time where you say enough is enough? When does it come a time when enough is enough? So domestic violence hotline number is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. That number is 1-800-799-7233. That's 1-800-799-SAFE. The National Center for Victims of Crime. It's 1-855-484-2846. That's the National Center for Victims of Crime. 1-855-4-VICTIMS or 1-855-484-2846. The National Runaway Safe Line is 1-800-RUNAWAY or 1-800-786-2929. Call the hotlines. Get some advice if you don't feel like you can tell a family member or a friend, or you just want somebody to talk to. Call these numbers. Have the conversation. You don't have to be in an abusive relationship. There are some good partners out here. You don't have to deal with abusive behaviors. Because a lot of time it's more about controlling you. But take this, domestic violence can be physical, sexual, emotional, economic, psychological, terminological actions, threats of actions. A lot of times people threaten you, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to put a gun to your head, I'm going to do this if you do that. Patterns of behavior that influence another person without an intimate partner relationship. This includes behavior, manipulation, humiliation, isolation. You may feel frightened, terrorized, threatened, hurt, wounded. That is domestic violence. Physical abuse could be hitting you, slapping you, shoving you, grabbing you, pinching, biting, hair pulling. These are types of physical abuse. This type of abuse also includes denying a partner medical care or forcing alcohol or drug use upon him or her. Sexual abuse. attempting coerce any sexual contact or behavior without consent. That means you're forcing yourself on somebody, which is rape. Sexual abuse include, but not limited to, rape, attacks on certain parts of the body, forcing sexual acts, physical violence, treating one in a sexual demeanor, a demeaning manner. That means they're treating you in a way that you should not be treated. So a sexual demeaning manner. Emotional abuse. They make you feel self-worth, like you're not worthy. Try to lower your self-esteem. This include, but not limited to, criticizing you, name calling, damaging one's relationship with his or her children. Emotional abuse, trying to call out your name to your children, make the children look down on you. Some may even have their children do the same thing that they're doing. That's emotional abuse. Psychological abuse, making you feel in fear of your life, intimidating, threatening physical harm to self, your children, family members, friends. They're just out of control. Forcing isolation from family, friends, school, work, just physical. Psychological abuse, telling you not to go to work. So there are a number of warning signs. And we just have to be mindful and bring awareness not only to you, but your children. So if they won't find themselves in a domestic violence situation, because domestic violence can happen, like I said, to anyone, regardless of race, your age, your sexual orientation, religion, sex, or gender identity. It can happen to anybody. Socioeconomic background or educational level. It doesn't matter. It can happen to same sex, opposite sex relationships, partners who are married, living together, dating, even share a child together. It's unwanted behavior. So today I say, if you are a victim of domestic violence, tell somebody. Maybe the more you talk about it, and let people know what you're going through, the more you can sort of ease your way out of the situation. Because maybe you didn't know you was in a domestic violence. But if I've said anything and it's sitting in your lap, and that you are experiencing this in a relationship, then maybe you need to question and ask yourself, am I in a domestic violence situation? And you may not want to know that answer to yourself, but it's okay to ask. And if you are, seek help. So that's why I say, when you say you're okay, but really you're not, it's okay to let people know that I'm not okay. I'm not well today. I'm dealing with this, or I'm dealing with that. In a relationship, it's okay to talk to people. If you have to sneak and do it, or sneak and call the hotline, there is help out in your county, in your city. Call the hotlines, and they have people that are trained professionals to help you get out of situations that you don't want to be in. So today I'm just bringing awareness. I love y'all. I hope that everybody take heed. Domestic violence is not a situation that you really want to be in. Check on your family. Check on your friends. Check on your neighbors, your co-workers, your children, your grandparents. If I missed anybody, check on them too. Just make sure that everybody is okay. And when they say they're okay, they're really okay. And let them know if you're not okay, it's okay. Just let me know what I can do to help you. I think it comes back to people being real friends and not out to harm people, but more people out to help people and show that they care. And it takes a little bit at a time. So I'm bringing awareness, check on people, and have a great evening. Even check on those that are say that they're okay and maybe they're not in a domestic violence situation, but they could be dealing with the loss of a family member or a loved one, or a relationship that was destroyed or gone bad. Check on them. Say, I'm going to check on your family. It's just so much that you make sure your family is okay. That goes a long way, just to hear somebody call and say, I just wanted to check on you to make sure you was okay, and to let you know if you need me, I'm available. That means a lot. Just those words that only take 5 minutes. If you need me, I'm here for you. I'm available. So I wish y'all well. Have a great evening. Just bringing awareness. If you got a friend or whatever, and you know they're in that type of situation, tell somebody. If you don't know who to tell, talk to the police. If you got a friend, especially if they're in high school, tell a principal, tell their parents, tell somebody to get somebody else involved, because they shouldn't have to suffer in silence. This is it. Y'all have a good day, and I'll come with y'all again. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.